On Monday morning, the National Rifle Association's Board of Directors will meet to select my successor. And if I have anything to say about it, you just heard from the next president of your National Rifle Association. Today, though, I want to thank you for what you do to support our Second Amendment rights and for being here at this incredibly important meeting. By your very presence, you're sending a message to the President, to Joe Biden, Dianne Feinstein, Andrew Cuomo, and Michael Bloomberg, and to all their friends in the media who've been claiming for months that you and America's gun owners simply don't count. We've all been under attack since the Connecticut tragedy by those who would exploit the victims of a madman to advance their own anti-Second Amendment agenda. We've been under attack because they realized that to win, they'd have to take down the NRA, demonize gun owners, and convince the majority of our fellow citizens that we are the real problem, rather than mass shooters and gun criminals the federal government refuses to prosecute. Within hours of the shootings in Connecticut, they swung into action. New York's billionaire mayor announced he would spend as much as it might take to help the gun banners and began writing checks to new groups that he hoped voters would believe were springing up spontaneously around the country. Media figures denounced the NRA and Wayne LaPierre as crazy and uncaring, with one raging that it is as important today to destroy the NRA as it was during World War II to defeat the Nazis. It was quite a performance. But support for the president's agenda began to weaken as elected officials and ordinary citizens looked deeper into what was being proposed, and as Second Amendment supporters like you began showing up by the hundreds of thousands at rallies and state capitals around this country. Observers quickly realized that the belief in our traditional rights and freedoms is as alive today as it was when the Bill of Rights was drafted so long ago. In the end, the fact that our opponents live in a different world, or perhaps even on a different planet than most Americans, doomed their efforts. I remember watching PBS as the president delivered his initial anti-Second Amendment diatribe and hearing a supposedly savvy commentator assure public broadcast viewers that a new day had dawned, that most NRA members actually agreed with the president, and that disgusted gun owners were abandoning the National Rifle Association in droves. Those assurances may have comforted his liberal anti-gun audience, but ignored the fact that that very day, while the president was speaking and right afterwards, 58,000 Americans, troubled by Barack Obama's proposals and fearing for the future of the Second Amendment, picked up their telephones and joined the National Rifle Association. In the end, United States senators realized that their constituents actually do count, that just because a president wants something doesn't mean they should salute and give it to him. They realized that because of you, because you and millions of others made it clear that you're as prepared as ever to stand and fight for our freedoms. By the time it was over, we had 1 million new members, and we had turned the tide. I stand here today to thank you and to let you know that those of us you've honored by trusting us to represent and speak for you during these challenging times are grateful for what you've helped accomplish. As your president, I can tell you that we've been blessed to have Wayne LaPierre as our commander-in-chief during this phase of the struggle to protect our constitutional rights. Today's NRA exists in large measure because of Wayne, and our opponents knew that to destroy it and the Second Amendment, they're going to have to go through Wayne LaPierre. They tried. They launched every personal attack you can imagine, and they failed. Wayne's courage, steadfast leadership, and willingness and ability to put together a team of strategists and activists that can outthink and outfight our opponents was tested as never before. And as always, Wayne LaPierre was up to the challenge. He assessed our strengths, analyzed our weaknesses, and knew what we could do on our own and what we needed outside help to accomplish. Asa Hutchinson is a former U.S. attorney and congressman. He headed the Drug Enforcement Administration, and he was Undersecretary of Homeland Security. Asa was just the man we needed to lead an initiative to draw up a plan to protect our children in the wake of the kind of tragedy that took place in Newtown, Connecticut. Wayne went to him, Asa responded. That took dedication and courage on both sides. Asa took on the job because he knew and knows that we're serious and that we would back him up, and he did a great job. Chris Cox at the Institute for Legislative Action proved that with a small staff and with your support, he could outduel a president and Senate liberals who have vowed again and again to gut the Second Amendment by dividing us or fooling us with attractive-sounding proposals that mask their true intentions. With Chris and Wayne providing the leadership, and with our members and our supporters behind them, we overcame the doubts of those sunshine soldiers who thought they could buy peace by making deals with our opponents, and handed Barack Obama the first major legislative defeat of his presidency. That, my friends, is quite an accomplishment that few of us would have predicted back in January. But let's not fool ourselves. It doesn't mean the war is over. We must never confuse winning a battle with winning the war. We all know that as we meet here, our opponents are regrouping, and we know that they'll be back. They're as dedicated today as they have ever been to consigning you and me and all those who believe in the freedoms guaranteed us by this nation's founders to the outer darkness. It was the inability of some senators, who should frankly have known better, to distinguish between a battle and a war that led them to agree to what they thought was a peace treaty, but was in reality merely a short-term armistice that would have helped New York Senator Chuck Schumer weaken us as our opponents prepare to launch their next anti-gun offensive. This is a mistake we will never make. We know the stakes. We know what you expect of us and of your NRA. We will never fail you. Think for a minute about the talent we have at our disposal. Wayne is the face of the National Rifle Association, and you hear from Chris and from your officers. But I'd like to take just a minute to pay tribute to the directors you elect, who develop the policies we follow, and who provide all of us with the strategic advice we rely on as we do battle on your behalf. Some of those who serve are household names: Ollie North, Tom Selleck, Ted Nugent, Carl Malone, Roy Innes, for example. While others are drawn from the ranks of those who serve or have served in elected office, former governors like Matt Blunt of Missouri, Jim Gilmore of Virginia, or senators and congressmen like Larry Craig of Idaho, Don Young of Alaska, Bob Barr of Georgia, Dan Boren of Oklahoma. There are others, though, that you don't hear about as often, but who are as vital a part of your NRA leadership team. J.D. Williams of Oklahoma, Washington, D.C., and now Texas is one such director. J.D. has been a mentor to Wayne, to me, and to the NRA itself for decades. As a successful attorney, and perhaps the most respected lobbyist of his generation, J.D. Williams has been instrumental in every single Second Amendment battle waged in Washington since the 1960s. He has been and continues to be a valued friend and advisor to Democrats and Republicans alike. He was crucial to the formation of the Institute for Legislative Action and has been an unfailingly wise counselor to Wayne and to every NRA president with whom he has served, and would, if we were a baseball team rather than a board of directors, be a perennial most valuable player. I remember riding back to Washington with J.D. Williams many years ago after a day of waterfowl shooting on the Chesapeake. He said he hadn't hunted ducks and geese until well after he'd moved to Washington, but remembered coming back after his first hunt and saying to himself, "So this, J.D., is why God put you on this earth." J.D. Williams is rarely wrong, but he was wrong that day. God put him on this earth to play a key role in the defense of freedom and the rights passed down to us by our founders. Although God really didn't mind if he took a day off here and there to shoot a few ducks and geese on the side. I'd like J.D. Williams and the rest of our board to stand because they represent you and they are the backbone of this association. Thank you, J.D., and thank you to the entire board of directors of the National Association. Everyone here, every member of the National Rifle Association, and every Second Amendment supporter in this country has benefited from your service, J.D., and from the service of your fellow directors. Thank you all.